Mic check, 1 2 1 2. What's up, guys? It's the Portuguese mofo, or Sam here, and we're gonna do another terrain analysis video for Ehime Gorge. So let's get right into it. Yeah, been a bit since I posted anything. Had a good friend come back, and just been helping him out, spending time with him and some other people. You know, enjoying some of the nice weather we had, touching grass. Things like that. So, you know, people are the priority, but hoping I can just get back into doing some of this next week, make some more videos tonight. So, but with that being said, the Ehime Gorge, here we are. So, here in this gorge, right, we've got these two hilltops here, alright, talking about earlier, right, even a saddle sort of setup. You could even call it a valley, right? And it's in reference to the gorge. So, played this battle plenty of times, or this map plenty of times, and right, so we got a lot to work with on this map, quite a lot. You got forests that ring these two hilltops here, okay? We've got pretty aggressive elevation down on this side, and this side as well. Although both sides have pretty flat hilltops, right? Getting to the top of them. This has a wider, call it plain, even though it's not truly a plain, right? But at the top of the hill, right? Again, some rolling hills, so just things to be aware of with matchlocks, right? A lot of potential to block shots. And just also recognizing where the dojos are, right? This is at the very edge of the map at the bottom of the hill. And in this case, this is the morale shrine, right? That's usually the most important one that people go for, especially on a map like this, with an archery dojo and a farmhouse. Okay, so it would be curious as to see in this match, right, what this dojo would, how it would affect the match. Now, if I had to guess, especially probably high-level players, you would almost ignore that dojo and just try and get it off to the side. It'd be like a little side mission. You'd probably try to send someone over there, but making this your priority, unless you take the front of this hill and just protect behind, kind of puts you in a tough spot, especially if you position yourself at the bottom of the hill, right? They've got all this cover, okay, and they're working downhill on you. So just things to think about with the dojo, right? I actually think, although I wouldn't try to completely ignore it, in this situation, I would hope that I have brought something to maybe push, right? Rush them pretty good. At least have a balanced army to try and get into them before they can position real well to take the morale dojo. And then if I had the opportunity, I'd just try to take it late. And that's where the farmhouse, right? Increasing the movement, speed, and stamina. Something like that could be helpful, right? So just more things to think about with the dojos and how they might affect your terrain assessment, right? Because really this is a pretty terrible spot for a dojo, but the morale shrine is quite important. So some other things to recognize, right? There's a lot of good ambush opportunities because of how the forests are spread out, right? There's a sort of ring going on around here, so there's some space for little movements potentially for guys to move through the forest unseen, right? But also just Kisho training units, there's plenty of areas to put them and to hide them on the edges, on the outside, even in the middle here. So a lot of ambush opportunity here on this map. So another thing to take note of now, when it comes to artillery and right? Even fire rockets, those types of things. I mean, fire rockets, because they are quite mobile, you know, getting them up on top of these hills here, I almost think this one is just a little better just because you can get to its edge, to a better line of sight a little quicker, at least from the post side. But, you know, things like Parrot guns, Armstrong guns, probably a little bit harder to deploy to great effect on this map. Like, you know, weirdly, like up here, not that you would ever probably get up here, would be a bad spot. But, right, for the function and just, you know, the setup to use artillery to great effect on this map, I think first requires more micro, right, from a fire rocket side, and from artillery, the micro would be probably too slow. Like, the battle would probably be over before. But you know, but if you can suck them in, bring them back, like, right, there are places where artillery could be highly effective, but in general, right, there's just a lot of potential things to obscure vision and those types of things. So, yeah, right, so, cool map, though. I've definitely played on this map quite a bit, and kind of, I was referencing one of the other maps, but this map too, because of how the dojos are set up, right, you have this one that's positioned on a little bit higher ground, this one down here, okay, and then we have the one all the way down here. So in my experience, this is a map where it tends to vie for this side, okay, for these two dojos, right, especially if they're good ones, but they're, from a terrain standpoint, they're more practical to go for, right? You take control of the high ground. If you can secure the high ground, especially this side, right, then you can have complete high ground control over the opponent if you beat them there, right? But typically the fight's going to take place up here. I mean, I've even had a lot of fights just take place at this shrine, because it was either the attack or the morale. The attack dojo or the morale shrine, right? And, you know, really the fighting happens heavy here, and then can swing this way, usually late. But yeah, my experience is the battle usually takes place here, and then there might be a little side skirmish going on for this dojo if it's deemed important, and then troops come in late. I'm sure, like, I'd have to go through a lot of replays in my hard drive, which I do plan to at some point. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I have both won and lost battles, right? Paying attention to this dojo, right, where the main and priority of the fighting was here, but you try to take this one late, and maybe you get, you know, that unit coming late for a good charge, or they're to the battle too late where they ended up being useless, right? This ended up being a useless side task, right? So, yeah, that's the biggest thing with this map, right? We got this saddle, there's good terrain, there's a lot to work with, right? You know, balanced or even rushed, I think works really great here. You know, skirmish style army, right? You're just going to have to be good when you're working through terrain, right? When it's not as flat and when there's a lot of trees, makes it a little more difficult. And for that same reason, matchlocks, you know, I wouldn't bring matchlock heavy armies, you know, one, maybe two to support, but because there's plenty of good spots to shoot from, for sure, right? I mean, realistically, I could say that for any map, but you do need to make sure you're positioning them well. So, in my eyes, rush or balance is best to go, and when I say balance, like, you know, archers will do well enough here as long as they're shooting into good pockets of the terrain, right? Obviously not shooting into trees and stuff. If they can get in the trees, that's always good. As far as cover for their own sake, okay, but yeah, this map, more so than a lot of others, right, the terrain really affects the dojos, because this one is just in such a disadvantageous spot as far as the map, right? It locks you right into the edge here, so if you were to lose a unit here, right, and they don't get shattered, they could leave the battlefield even though they technically were still in the fight, things like that. So just things to be aware of. So Ehime Gorge, alright, I think there is a lot of opportunity on this map. You can do a lot of different things. So I wouldn't be cavalry heavy here, although like cavalry can always work pretty well, right? There isn't any water to slow them down a lot, right? But pretty heavy gradients, so working uphill is going to be tough. Getting a good downhill charge in a lot of these spots will be great, right? But there's a good amount of forest, right? So this isn't a bad map at all for cavalry, right? Because they can pretty much move anywhere, right? There isn't obstructed terrain anywhere. Not really, actually. Yeah, I don't think there is any, right? So no actually obstructed terrain, right? Which is very helpful for cavalry. Okay, that means they're not gonna pathfind, and I shouldn't say that because there's always potential to have weird pathfinding in Total War, but right, the odds of them getting all messed up with their pathfinding is a lot less. So I still think it's a solid map for cavalry. Definitely not the best one out there, but cavalry can definitely be used to great effect on this map, especially with trying to control these two hilltops, right? It's one way that a lot of cavalry is used, not only to scout up ahead, right, see guys that are maybe hidden quicker, but even just to try and control ground, push them up, right, kind of just take the front, right, try and set a front, okay, because sometimes if you do it right, you'll stop the opponent from continuing to move forward. They might stop to try and get shots or whatever it is, or they're just making reactions. So yeah, so this is Ehime Gorge. I hope you got something out of it. I know for me personally, these terrain videos, right, it's just good. First, it's keep me engaged as I can't play as much, or I haven't been playing as much, and right, and like I said, I haven't played every map, so it's a good way to continue to learn, right, and even if the activity of playing isn't going on, study is always good too. So anyways, hopefully I can get some more videos out and up tonight and through the week, and see you guys later.